Thank you, Eloise. Fantastic to be here. Hello, everybody. I've got a wonderful set of graphs to walk you through today, and I'm going to spend the next sort of 7 or 8 minutes walking you through some of the data and analytics that we see in the mortgage world. I'm Phil Bailey, Sales Director at 27Tec, and we build and design exceptional technology that pretty much makes the process of searching, applying for, and obtaining a mortgage simpler, faster, and more efficient. And today I'm going to lift the lid on some of the data items that really drive the mortgage market forwards. And don't worry, this won't be death by PowerPoint. This is 4 really good graphs that are going to dig deep into our analytics platform and really uncover what's going on in the specialist and complex areas of lending. One thing to note, first of all, before I dive straight into it, we look at analytics across our broker activity. So we have around 14,500 mortgage brokers actively using our platform. And this year, we're likely to see just over 20 million mortgage searches. And the data you're going to see today is driven on broker activity. Activity is a metric we like to use that covers searches and ESIS documents. It gives us a really good idea of what's going on in the research phase for mortgage brokers around the country. So diving straight into it, first of all, we're going to look at the general trends of the market. So where have we come from and where are we going? So this lovely little graph here shows activity for mortgage brokers over the last 18 months. So we've got the purchase and remortgage lines, and as you'd expect, they undulate around a little bit, but overall they kind of mirror each other pretty accurately. Purchase is always, as a standard, around 50% of the mortgage market. We see it's sort of split 50-50, and you can see the peaks and the troughs as we go through the year. So the first peak on the left is the highs of 2020. We've then got the drop off where we hit lockdown. We've then got it building back up from demand. We've got a big spike as we head to the right, which is Christmas, and then we've got all the activity that we've had from the stamp duty and government incentives. 2 things to pull out on this graph though. One, left-hand side completely. This is pre-COVID on the left. So this is the January and February of 2020, before COVID came along. This was the time when the market was exceptionally busy. Right over on the right-hand side now, we're right up to the end of June. So stamp duty has come to an end now, the discounts. So everything's starting to stabilize and come back to normal. And you'll notice that we're still 15% busier than we were at the highs pre-COVID. So yes, you are busy, and you will probably remain busy for the foreseeable future. We're now going to go into graph 2. I'm going to really dig deep into the adverse side of the business. So looking at over the adverse searches we see in the system. So these are the adverse filters from payday loans through to defaults and CCJs. Over 2019 and 2020, we saw a very similar pattern in the searches for adverse. Okay? Most of these sit in the defaults, arrears, and CCJs element of the system. What's fascinating, and one thing you should really take away from today, is how H1 in 2020, well, this year is starting to pan out. And as we head into 2022, we're starting to see this really grow. The prediction is that this is going to be around 30% up in terms of adverse activity in our platform by the end of the year. One of the key drivers for this is obviously COVID. We're starting to see more brokers search for customers' needs and mortgages where there's a CCJ, there's a default, there's an impaired credit. So this is growing huge, a 30% increase. We're already 70% up on the year-to-date figure from last year. So as the trend starts to pan out and stabilize over the rest of this year, a 30 to 35% increase in this kind of adverse and impaired credit searches are a real possibility. Next part of the search is self-employed growth. So this is one that we find fascinating in how the market started to change. So this lovely little graph is the self-employed activity in our platform over the last 2.5 years. And it paints a really good trend analysis of what's going on in the market. So overall, self-employed has grown 105% in search activity in our platform over those 2.5 years. Actually, if you look on the right-hand side of the graph, you'll find it's higher than it's ever been. This is as we bounce out of COVID and things start to stabilize. You'll see the need for customers that are self-employed to get mortgages has never been higher. And it's going to continue this way as we head through the rest of this year into 2022. One more graph to show you here. Broker hours, the work that you all do in the market right now. And this is a fascinating graph. And this is a snapshot of the 10 million searches that have happened over the first half of this year for our platform. And it's a very similar graph that we see year on year. But actually what's happening is this graph is squashing down. It's starting to flatten out a little bit. Well, you're all working longer hours. You're working before 8, you're working after 6. And looking at the graph data here, we've got some people doing searches and buy-to-let activity well into the early hours of the morning. So hats off to you keeping the market going. Two things to really pull out on this though. One is you'll see that most of the data, most of the search data is in the normal working conditions. But actually there's a trend appearing here. It's starting to increase. The time that brokers are spending outside of the normal hours, this is before 8 o'clock and after 6 p.m, is increasing dramatically. We're seeing a regular trend of shift year on year where this is increasing. And actually, free areas of lending are starting to buck that trend completely. So these particular areas, buy-to-let, shared ownership, and self-build, are well beyond that trend. These three really stand out for me. And what it's telling me in the data is that mortgage advisors are spending a good amount of their time clearing these complex mortgages outside of the normal working day. Maybe they're trying to get them off their desk straight away, or they're working later into the evening because of the time it takes to put into the research. It's worth noting that this is where a lot of the trends are appearing. Although residential is starting to increase overall and spread out, shared ownership, buy-to-let, self-build are really starting to pick up in those early hours and late evenings. That gives a nice snapshot of what's actually happened in the market. And although I could talk for hours about the data and trends we see here at 27Tec, I want you to take away a few key points from today before you roll into the next sessions. One, research is increasing. Mortgage intermediaries are doing, on average, 4.1 searches for every ESIS that's been produced. So this is not just true cost analysis and comparing the market. This is digging deep into the analysis that's going on. You're spending more time researching the market, you're spending more time on our platform, and you're spending more time comparing eligibility criteria, affordability, and the products that are suited for those customers. And that's not just because the market has shifted to become more complex. Products have shrunk down. The number of products we've got in the market is still half of what we had pre-COVID. And we're seeing more trends where more research is required because customer circumstances and the mortgage world as a whole has become more complex. We're 15% busier now than we were pre-COVID. So even with stamp duty relief being removed now, and we've come to the end of that holiday period, you're still 15% busier than you were on average in 2019. And we're 105% growth in activity for self-employed. This is huge. Year on year, self-employed activity in our platform is increasing, and it shows no signs of stopping. You're expecting to see this grow exponentially as it heads through the next 2 to 3 years. And first-time buyers. First-time buyers got a bit of a hit last year, but they're back up significantly. We're seeing 22% increase in activity for first-time buyers over last year. So in the first 6 months of this year, there's been a 22% increase. But in case all of this data has confused you and you're unsure what to take away, I want you to take away this one key point, because this point is what stands out to me more than anything. There's been a potential, well, there's a potential growth for adverse research in our platform. So far in H1, we've seen a 70% uplift on year-to-date figures compared to last year. If we normalize the trend line for the rest of the year, we're expecting to see somewhere between a 30 and 35% increase in adverse and impaired credit searches through our platform in 2021. This is a huge increase, and it shows the fallout of COVID. And it's something you should all be aware of when you're looking and researching products, making sure you're finding the right products and the right lenders for your customer. And this feeds into the rise of the specialist lender. It's never been more prudent to actually search these specialist lenders and make sure you're aware of their criteria and products. We're seeing this increasing day on day, week on week, month on month. And actually, we see no sign of stopping the mortgage market from growing more complex and more challenging. So make sure you have the right technology, the right systems, and the right knowledge to research the market properly for your customers' needs. I'm Phil Bailey, we're 27Tec, and Eloise, it's been a pleasure to present to you, and I'm going to hand back to your wonderful presenter.